Hello, good afternoon, good morning, and maybe even good evening to folks on the call today. Welcome to today's webinar, Unleash the Power of Multicultural Influencer Marketing. We have a great program for you today with some really amazing guests that we're incredibly thrilled to have with us. Just a few housekeeping items before we get started. Today's presentation is being recorded and you will receive a follow-up email within 24 to 48 hours with a link to that recording, along with a copy of the slides. For our non-native English speaking participants, we've enabled live transcription. So please click on the live transcript button in your Zoom toolbar, located at the top or bottom of your screen, to view that. To submit any questions for our speakers today, please click on the Q&A button that's located in your Zoom toolbar, either at the top or bottom of the screen again, and you can feel free to submit your questions at any point during the webinar. We do have a lot of content to get to today, and we'll do our best to get to your questions at the end of the presentation. Any that we do not get to directly, we will follow up on afterward. Also, feel free to use the chat button to comment on what you're hearing or to chat with any other attendees during the session. After the webinar is over, you'll automatically be directed to a survey, so we ask that you please take a minute to share your feedback with us. And lastly, if you have any tech issues, please send us a message through the chat button in your Zoom toolbar, and we'll do our best to help you out on that. Now, I would like to turn today's program over to Gregory Curtis from IRI's media team. Greg, please go ahead.
Thank you so much for that lovely introduction, Jennifer. And I want to thank everyone for attending Unleash the Power of Multicultural Influencer Marketing. I'm your host and moderator, Gregory Curtis Jr. I'm also the Director of Emerging Media and Influencer Marketing here at IRI. I am supported today by the Executive Vice President of Global Solutions, Jennifer Polino, and we're really excited to really show you what we have in store. Can we move to the next slide, please? Today, I'm accompanied by an all-star cast of marketing executives that have an extensive career track record of proven success. I'm just honored and more enamored than you could possibly imagine. But with that being said, Tiana Conley, who is the Vice President of Global Portfolio Strategy of Mars, is on our panel, accompanied by Carr, the President of Media Sales for BET Networks. Also, Desiree Rogers, the Chief Executive Officer of Fashion Fair. Lizette Williams, the Global Head, Vertical Solutions Marketing Executive and Pioneer of Meta, and Barry Wade, the Managing Director of Cultural Partnerships and Identity at OMD. Super excited to hear their thoughts around what's happening within the influencer space, but most importantly and specifically multicultural. With that being said, next slide. So we're going to do a high-level overview, just kind of doing a snapshot at the current state of influencer marketing as it stands in 2022. That being said, influencers right now are being required, at least in the marketplace from what we've seen, to have more presence on more than one ecosystem. So they're not just being asked to have a presence on TikTok or Instagram or YouTube, but to really have an integrated marketing communication strategy from an influencer perspective to really get the most bang for the buck from these campaigns with influencers. We're also seeing the potential use case for affiliate programs. We're also seeing that platforms such as TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, a lot of the influencers are now doing live shopping experiences where they're really going into the stores. So they're going into Ulta Beauty, they're going into the Sephora's, they're actually trying on the products, they're engaging with them, and they're giving their real-time feedback to their consumers and the audiences that they serve. We're also seeing a huge demand and call out for diversity and representation. Micro and nano influencers are actually dominating the space right now due to the specialization that they sit within. Brands are also looking to develop more strategic partnerships with these influencers. We're not seeing one-off cases anymore. We're actually seeing strategic partnerships and brand ambassadorship, if you will, within the influencer space. We're also seeing a huge migration away from text and image and into video and audio. So podcasting, platforms such as Clubhouse that are live conversational platforms, and video platforms such as TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube, they're growing at an exponential rate. And also a key word that you're going to hear a lot on this panel is to be authentic. That is a word that resonates very well within the millennial and Gen Z audiences. And so I really want to make sure that that is a centerpiece within this conversation, as well as cost and issue marketing, and paid advertising is always going to be key. With that being said, we're expecting spend in 2020 to cap off anywhere between $16.6 billion within the influencer marketing space. Next slide. So pre-COVID-19 was not a great look for a lot of organizations. Reason being, multicultural was not a centerpiece, it was not a focus. With multicultural consumers representing a little bit more than 40% of the US population, we actually represented, give or take, 5% of the actual marketing spend and total assets from a media and advertising perspective. And what the data is actually showing is that the minority is actually going to be the majority in less than 2 decades out. Next slide, please. And so what did COVID-19 teach us? So in 4 simple buckets, it taught us digital transformation, it taught us cultural adaptation, it taught us out with the old and in with the new. And it also taught us the importance of being accountable with our brand and corporate identities. And so the COVID-19 virus during this global pandemic, it caused a massive shift within advertising, marketing, promotional and media spends, forcing businesses and brands to reevaluate how they were going to go to market with the future of advertising and marketing as a whole. And what we also saw during the height of the pandemic was a large, uneasy social call out. There was a lot of civil unrest. We saw Blackout Tuesday. We saw her say her name. We saw I Can't Breathe. We saw Black Lives Matter. We saw the actual bill, Stop Asian Hate. And what they showed was a call out of a lot of unrest, a lot of police brutality, a lot of civilian trauma amongst one another during the height of the pandemic. And also what we saw, according to the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, about 58% of Black-owned businesses were already at risk before the pandemic of closing. And during the pandemic, about 50-something% closed their businesses within the first 6 months of the pandemic permanently. And during that, there was a huge call out that a lot of the brands and retailers and organizations were, showcasing solidarity online with social media, but they were actually not showing up in regards to what it means to support Black and Brown people throughout the United States. And that's when Aurora James, she took it upon herself to start something called the 15% Pledge, which is a US-based nonprofit organization that encourages retailers to pledge at least 15% of their shelf space to Black-owned businesses in the United States. And she did that number off of 15%, highlighting that the populace in the US is about 15% Black. This actually forced a level of accountability and started a much larger conversation. I'm happy to say that IRI is affiliated with one of those retailers, that retailer being Ulta Beauty, that sits on the board for 15% Pledge. Next slide, please. And so the conversation centered around millennial and Gen Z is to show up as your authentic self. Hi, my name is Greg. My pronouns are he, they, and anything respectful. And they're requiring you also to tell a story, to be more authentic, to capture me. Next slide, please. And I think that for marketers, this is where we really need to meet the general populace at the intersections of action. And I lean into Black feminist thought. Kimberly Crenshaw, who is a professor at Columbia University School of Law, she talks about what intersectionality means and how it's interconnected to social categories such as race, class, gender, religion, sexuality, disabilities. And the list can go on in regards to one's identity and how sometimes they can overlap and cause discrimination from a power perspective. And these compounding identities can cause a very tiered level of oppression. But from a marketing perspective, this allows for us to see our audience and for our audience to feel seen. This allows for us to say, hey, we see you as a disabled Latinx woman, second generation. We see you as, a married queer couple with 3 children or 2 children that you adopted. Next slide, please. We see you as, a queer couple with 3 children. We see you as a Latinx, foodie. We see you as a dark-skinned African-American woman looking for the right color match. We see you as an Asian influencer who cares about skin health and beauty. We see you as an African-American man who cares about your wellness and fitness. We see you as, as an Indian, disabled, queer-bodied individual navigating the world, from the lens in which you see it. And with that being said, here at IRI, we've been conducting a series of studies, and I'm actually going to yield to my Executive Vice President, Jennifer Polino, to take over to the next few slides.
Thank you, Gregory. Thank you for everything that you're doing and, being the host of this. And, here at IRI, if you go to the next slide, Joe, what we take diversity, equity, and inclusion very seriously. It is an undeniable strength of what we have. We think diverse people, cultural, the thought, the skill set that they bring to our business, our clients' business, and to the people and the communities is absolutely 100% important in every single thing that we're doing. We think about the way in which and how we commit to this dynamic culture and how we embrace it, not only the people, but the creativity and how we use that inclusiveness for growth across the board. And we are dedicated to using our unique strength and position and our assets that we have, because we have a lot of them, and relationships to help support diverse and minority-led businesses, to help strengthen our communities and help provide research that helps bring and level up the entire communities that we support. So one of those pieces that we do is a lot of research. We have a lot of data. And if you go to the next slide, because we know that when we think about what is happening in the marketplace and what is important to people and how that affects brands and media, we want to make sure that we incorporate all of that knowledge and help brands be able to use that for the betterment of not only their equity, but also to the ways in which they're going to connect with their consumers. And so we know that consumers really care about gender equality, and it's top of mind for them. And we know that there is an increasing awareness and concern about it, about the way that people are approached in ads and content. We know that people think it's an important issue. Men, when we think about gender and we think about overall equality. And then when we look at, specific groups like Hispanic women and Black women, Hispanic women don't cite that they have a majority of them cite a lack of female role models in what they're seeing and how they're being presented. And Black women feel that only a minimal amount, 18%, are feeling that media accurately portrays them. So IRI has joined up with the ANA and CHER to conduct very specific, unique research to help improve the performance of women and girls in media and for accurate portrayals. And if you can turn to the next slide, we'll talk to just a little bit about how this started. started, what we do is we use a GEM metric, which is a gender equality metric that is the gold standard for measuring gender equality. And the partner with CHER ABX has provided this index that understands how women are portrayed in advertisements. And basically it scores individuals, the GEM measure scores individuals on 4 key traits, the creatives or programming on 4 key statements. Is the opinion tied? How is that opinion of the female character? How are they presented? If characters are shown in a respectful manner, if characters are presented in an inappropriate manner, and if characters are viewed in a positive role model. And so we've taken that information and we combined the GEM score with IRI's proprietary sales lift study. Joe, you can move to the next slide. That allows us to see and bring together an understanding, not just qualitatively, but quantitatively. How is better lift scores on how does better GEM scores provide better lift results, and are we seeing better improvement in advertisements through sales because you're accurately representing girls and women in media. And so we found absolutely 100% direct correlation between that. On the next slide, we just finished and launched our latest study, which looks at a diversity view. And what we had found was that creatives that were met with higher GEM scores above a baseline, in this particular case, 106 was the baseline. We saw women of Hispanic, the brands that had GEM scores above that baseline, 41% increase in sales lift versus those below the baseline. African-American women ads scored 80% better than brands that had creatives that were lower. And what was even more impressive was the fact that men that saw these ads, that saw women being more accurately and better portrayed, were giving the ratings much higher. Their sales lift were 120% for Hispanic men, and African-American men, 196%. We know that everybody is important in this journey, and they see women that we are focused on. They see them as, they want them to be portrayed as represented well because they're, have mothers and sisters and girlfriends and wives and daughters that they think that this is an important trait. And so this is some of the research that we do and use those assets. And then our second piece that IRI is so dedicated in, the next slide is a program that we support with retailers. It's called a Diversity Advantage program. We call it DAP. And basically what we help is it's a totally employee volunteer led at IRI using all of our resources. And we use it to help develop and inspire rising minority and women-owned consumer goods companies to help achieve positive growth across the board. And we provide these participants in this particular program a number of resources. We help them provide them understanding of the market measurement services, consultative services that we provide them, specific training, not only with products, but also too, and how to negotiate and work with the retailers and prep for retailer meetings, and sharing of overall collaborative best practices on how to grow. So this is one of these two pieces of work are just some of the work that we continue to do to drive and improve the diversity, equality, and inclusion that we have across and for the industry. So thank you all for being here. And I know I'm going to turn it over back to Greg to give us to start the panel.
Excellent. Next slide. Thank you. So again, we're accompanied by an all-star cast. Could not be any more great and honored. Again, accompanied by Jennifer Poloni, Poloni, pardon me, the EVP Global Media Solutions Executive, Tiana Conley, the VP Global Portfolio Strategy for Mars, Carr, the President of Media Sales for BET Networks, Desiree Rogers, the CEO of Fashion Fair, Lizette Williams, the Global Head, Vertical Solutions Marketing for Meta, and Barry Wade, the Managing Director for Cultural Partnerships and Identity. With that being said, we can now end the PowerPoint part of the presentation, and my panelists can now all be on screen. So excited to see your lovely faces. With that being said, I am going to open up with the first question. It's open to all. Feel free to tap in how you see fit. What does diversity in marketing look like to you?
I'll jump in really quickly, but before I answer that question, I want to say, Greg, I see you, and Jennifer, you did a fabulous job. Thank you for that. You guys are amazing. For multicultural marketing, what diversity looks like for us is trying to tap into what Greg said earlier, people's true self. And in order to do that, you have to look at their cultural identity. And no more can you go to the traditional days of looking at people at face value and say, oh, I know that person's Black, because they may not be Black. They may be Afro-Latino, who has a completely different experience than, say, a Black American. Or someone that may look Asian may not be the same American Asian that we may be used to or consider. Because the reality is they have a completely different background of how they were raised, where they were raised. And, you know, a Chinese person is not the same as someone who came from Japan. So for us, we're digging into these kind of identity traits, understanding them, and making sure that we're able to deliver authentic messages to them and find them where they actually are in life and on the media platforms that they choose to engage with.
I would say that I certainly agree with everything that's been said, and thank you so much for having all of us here today. I'm excited to hear what my panelists have to say and excited to hear what I think of. But anyway, the one thing that I would say is, as we think about diversity, we're in the cosmetic space, we think about, you know, creating a community and creating a personality. What is that authentic personality of Fashion Fair? And so not trying to pretend that we're something that we're not, embracing our history, but also creating a community where all diverse voices can be heard and not just judging, you know, whether, as you said, you don't know, every Black person is not the same, every mixed person is not the same, you know, and so we want to hear, you know, really from them what they want. And so as we create these communities, we're coming from it from a different perspective. If you think about a relationship that you have with anyone, you've got a certain personality as that person. We think the same way about the brand. What is the personality of that brand? And what is that person/brand interested in? And so as we think about this community that we're creating, we create spaces for people to be whoever they are. They're funny, if they want a tutorial, if they want to just experiment, if they know nothing about makeup, you have to create spaces that allow people, diverse personalities, to interact with the brand.
Greg, thank you for allowing me to be here. I agree with Barry and Desiree, but I would add, for us to finish that sentence, there is no real diversity without equity and inclusion. If it's just diverse, it's just really optics. It's just what people can see. You've got to have inclusion and you've got to have equity for all players in the space. So I would add that we sort of, what does diversity, equity, and inclusion look like in today's world?
I love that, Louis. And I just want to build on all of your points. It's interesting, when I thought about this question, I feel like a lot of you took a consumer angle on this, and I thought about it from a marketing practitioner angle, right? What does diversity in marketing look like from a marketing practitioner angle? I spent 13 years on the consumer side. A lot of times I think in our industry, we're looking at representation in advertising. We're looking at things like messaging, but I started to think about diversity in marketing is really looking at a full funnel marketing approach. So everything from research methods to creative representation to measurement, to media targeting and optimization? And how do we start to break down the systemic racism that exists in our industry? Because by the way, it still does exist, and all of us are trying to do our jobs to break it down, to really combat every single part of the full funnel process, from research methodology to creative to media targeting and optimization, because we have a lot of work to do. And I don't know that we could just rely on creative representation or consumer habits. Like, we have to really start to break down, I think, across all of the spectrums that we represent in order to really get to a truly diverse, equitable, and inclusive place that we need to get to in marketing.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And just to kind of take it from marketing all the way to the creative process, because we have people that represent both of those aspects. But it's really thinking about it. If you sit on the client side, or if you sit on the creative side, thinking about it in front of the lens, thinking about it behind the lens, thinking about who are the people that are sitting in the room at the board table, who are the executives, who are the people coming through the pipeline from a talent standpoint, because you really do need to have those people in the room as part of the process to ensure that we have that as an output. And the last piece I'll end with, which is where Greg started, which is economic equality. It's dollars and cents. So if we're not investing so that we have representation in media, if we're not paying people what they earn and at equitable rates, if we're not, spending, then we're not going to achieve equity in marketing either.
Excellent.
Tiana, I wanted to just give the statistic you just mentioned of achieving equality in wages. One of the statistics that I know from the research that we have done is that if women were paid equally as men, just as a general statistic, we would add $28 trillion to the world economy. That's a powerful statistic for anyone and for any brand.
Excellent. With that being said, we're going to go to the next question, which this question I would love to hear from the lens of Tiana, Lizette, Barry, and Jennifer. With that being said, the question is, how important is it for compounding identities or intersectionality to be leveraged and mass marketing initiatives? And I'm really excited to hear this specifically from Lizette and Tiana, because Tiana and I both are mixed race, and then Lizette and I both share our Hispanic origins with Puerto Rico. So really excited to hear.
Yeah, I can start with that one. So just to put it out there, I'm half Filipino, half Black. And I think it starts with something Barry and I think Desiree were talking about a little bit, which is allowing people to exist outside of the monolith in which we traditionally define them, right? So it's not just even also the interest, but traditionally we allow people who are defined as white to have definitions that define them culturally and by their interests and by their passions. And somehow that breaks down when we're thinking about people that are Black or Latino or Asian, for somehow we just assume that they're all the same. So I think liberating ourselves from that mindset and really saying, I may not specifically see myself represented as a Black and Asian woman, although shout out to Kamala, shout out to her. But if we as marketers can start to go beyond that and start connecting with people like me in a deeper way and saying, single moms or someone who really loves politics or loves wearing African prints, or thinking about other types of identities like a non-binary Latino who loves to make makeup tutorials and play mariachi, like an influencer we've used on one of our brands at Mars. I think that's really where it becomes very powerful when we dig deeper.
Yeah, I love that. I'll just build on that. I'm Afro-Puerto Rican. I'm fluent in Spanish. Both of my parents are Puerto Rican. There were slaves there. I always got to start. People are like, why do you look the way you look? There were slaves in Puerto Rico, y'all. Also pledged the Black sorority in college. Like, I check all the boxes. But I like to start this with telling a story, because I remember my first multicultural marketing job was at Kimberly-Clark. It was I'd never done it before. I was at Pepsi before that, did general marketing. And I went in to meet with my media buying agency. And they came to the table and they showed me the media buying flowcharts, right? So they had all of them laid out, and they put in front of me the Hispanic media flowchart. I am Hispanic. On the flowchart was Univision, Telemundo. And I was like, where is the rest? Like, I know we watching more stuff than this. Like, where are the rest of the networks on here? I was so confused on how they had limited a demographic of people to a language. And it was a moment for me that was really eye-opening early in my trajectory in multicultural marketing, because I was like, we're thinking about this all the wrong way. And I go back to the industry being systemically racist, because we could start there and then we can be here all day to talk about that when I get shown a media flowchart for Hispanic people and it's 2 Spanish language networks on it. But it was eye-opening to me because I didn't feel seen, heard, or represented, and it wasn't reflective of my intersectional identity. And it's one of the reasons I ended up going to Meta, because when we think about the way digital media works and the way digital platforms engage and drive relevancy for consumers, they're thinking beyond simple demographics and looking at behaviors and really beginning to engage in a very different way, which I think is the way of the future. I know we're going to talk about that, but I think it's critically important. And I still think that we're in a place where we're looking at simple demographics to drive media engagement.
You guys touched on a lot of great things. And Lizette, you're absolutely right when it comes to the behaviors, the intersectionality, and really the identity as well. At the end of the day, when we really dig into these things and we really try to plan out a media plan or a messaging campaign or what have you, you have to dig in. You can't just stay at the surface level. It's not going to work for you. And for the companies that are so far behind and they don't recognize that the level of cultural identity coming to America with Gen Z in every generation after them, I'm telling you today, if you're so far behind, I'm shorting your stock because you're not going to win. You're just not going to win. There is no reason why Rihanna could come out of nowhere and have $1 billion company if you were doing your job. But because you haven't done the hard work necessary to dig in and question a media strategy that only had Univision and Telemundo on it, all of a sudden, you can see these very vibrant, rich influencers coming to market with new products that you're like, well, how come we never did that? Well, you probably didn't listen to the young lady that was Afro-Latina that said we should have this shade of color. Or the gentleman that was at the other end of the table saying, yeah, my mother literally mixes candles and these types of scents because it reminds of her Cuban heritage. You have to dig in. And I think that is one of the powerful things you can use the data for, to at least start your journey and digging in and being able to recognize these kind of micro cultures, micro trends, and then implementing that for your business strategies.
All right, excellent. Moving on to the next question. This one is actually for Lizette. How will the metaverse shape the future of business, marketing, and ultimately influencer marketing? And how will multicultural audiences play a role in that for Meta?
Yeah. I mean, I love that question. I think we're 10 to 15 years out right now from the metaverse being truly something that is being realized, and it's really focused on driving immersive experiences. I mean, I think all of us know that multicultural creators are the backbone of the creator economy, which is now a $10 billion economy right now. It was $1 billion 5 years ago. Who's driving that? Who's influencing culture and really pushing us forward? BIPOC people. Like, I mean, we already know that we've been driving culture forward. And so as we think about the future of the metaverse and how we're thinking about the growth of the creator economy and what that looks like, I think that's going to be critically important. One of the things that Meta is doing is in the design of the metaverse, tapping into diverse audiences to do that. Like, how do we drive inclusivity in immersive experiences? We have a partnership with Howard University right now that we're doing, really focused on research to ensure that we're driving inclusivity in those experiences. We're also working on a pipeline program right now to drive diverse talent to really focus on becoming creators and driving AI and a lot of the work that we don't talk about from a tech standpoint. So there's a lot being done, I think, in this space. And I think as it is now, diverse creators will continue to be the backbone of the metaverse as they are today with the creator economy.
Excellent. Thank you for that. So with that being said, the next question that I have is actually right here. And this one is going to be an open to all, because I would love to hear the different POVs and the organizations that you all represent. Which is more of a priority for your organization and or clients? Brand awareness or sales performance when we are looking at influencer campaigns?
Well, Greg, for most of our clients, especially today, it's sales. People need revenues. They don't want to wait. They want it as quick as possible. For some of the new brands, of course, brand awareness plays a big role in that. But at the same time, they're getting that brand awareness. They do want people to go to the stores and to the aisles and to the internet to sort of get and test the product. So most of the time when people do influencer campaigns with us, it's all about sales.
I think Lewis is spot on. And I just want to admit an opportunity, I think, for the industry on the client side. I sit in CPG. I've been there for 20 years. And I think Mars, like many other CPGs, we're on a journey, is what I would call it. I think we're attempting to evolve our metrics to beyond just traditional KPIs, beyond just thinking of only sales. I think it's stretching. And I think organizations are trying to push towards a more data-driven mindset, like Lizette was talking about at Meta, right? Like we see what's happening with tech companies. We see where the growth is coming for, and we're itching and scratching for some of that. And we know that that's going to be a key to the unlock. So I would say, we're thinking about things like engagement rate, impressions converting to media value, reach, et cetera, as part of performance tracking. And I think we're getting better. But there's always this tension, there's always this challenge and pressure to say, okay, how did that drive sales though? How did that drive ROI? And we have to have good discipline. We also have the endorsement of our leaders. And so that, it's always tricky. And I think, especially with influencer campaigns, because we tend to get into these market mix modeling where we're evaluating versus other mediums and trying to say, well, which one was most efficient, which one was most effective. And so, I just want to be open and admit that it's a journey.
So one of the things I would say, and I have a little bit, I think that sales is the top of the pyramid, right? But because I think all of these things, whether it's awareness, engagement, all of these things are really driving sales. That's ultimately what you want. And so as I think about the brand I represent, which is a mature brand, it's been in the marketplace since 1973. And so without creating the community that was created well before my time, we would not be able to build what we are building today. And so what we're talking about in terms of future long-term ability for a brand to survive over the years and to continue to generate those sales, you have to have engagement. You have to have a community that's been developed. You have to have a relationship and that people care about with that particular brand. But ultimately, the winners are those that are able to generate the sales. Otherwise, you're out of business. If you have no sales, you can't compete. You don't exist. But I think some of these more mature brands, like a Fashion Fair Cosmetics, part of the reason that we're able to come back into the marketplace is because of that long-term commitment to community and to develop a real relationship. If you hear women talk about this brand, some are in tears. That's how deep the relationship is, and that's how willing they are to talk about the brand in terms of what it has meant to them and to pass that knowledge on to the next generation. Now, I'm not saying we cannot sit and rest on that. We have to deliver against what is required today. So it's always a combination, but ultimately, I think all of us would be unfair to say that we're not going to be measured at some point by sales.
I agree with that. I want to give kind of a little bit of a controversial perspective on this, because it's feeling very much like an either or conversation. Either you're going to drive brand awareness or you're going to drive sales. But I don't think it has to be. Like, how many times have you bought something you never heard of the brand, right? And I think when you start to couple influencers that are driving brand awareness, what you're going to see, and by the way, I work in Meta, we do lots of studies on driving purchase intent through a full funnel sales process, literally what we do every day. When creators are out there, really, especially you get the right creator, you get the right talent that has trust and credibility with a specific audience, and they're talking about a brand, consumers are more likely to purchase that brand, and they can pull a sale down the full purchase funnel. The unlock is figuring out how to marry the best of brand marketing with performance marketing so that you get loyal consumers who keep coming back and making those purchases. And I don't know that it has to be either or if done the right way.
Yeah, Lizette and everyone, I agree with the fact that, right, you need to make sure that you're driving the awareness with the right individuals, and using the data to understand who those individuals are, to not only create, but also to target, to ensure that they're getting the right relevant information, and also to drive, the greater awareness but bring them in and convert them. And when you're looking at that conversion for sales, you have to think about, right, purchase intent is great, but at the end of the day, right, so you're driving the awareness, but also too, you do have to get those sales. And that's where you can start being creative. And that's kind of like some of the work that I highlighted at the beginning, where you can think about, right, you can get these very specific groups of individual cohort groups designed, and clustered any way that you want, and be able to read that and understand if they were exposed and if they were purchased, and how great, of the increase that was, because you're getting the relevant content to them in the relevant space. And that to me is the ability to bring both of those pieces together. And we need to continue to, what I continue to say is that, as part of a researcher, you have to continue to test on all of those metrics, because as we can see, even just over the last couple of years, how society and people are, consuming media and how they interact with it is so much different. So, a study, 6 months from now, while it was really important, you need to make sure, like, how do you think about continuing to get study after study, but doing it in flight and making sure that you can do it with speed and make the changes that you need to. And we still have a long way to go with it. We have a lot of data, but there's still the ability to, how do we get all of those pieces through the pipeline of driving the creative to, execution at a faster rate of speed. And we're going to do that with technology.
Excellent. All right. So you all, for the next question, how are your organizations taking charge and optimizing and leveraging the influencer marketing category? I would love to hear some examples of how you're leveraging the influencer category. Tiana, Lizette, Desiree, and Louis, feel free to tap in.
Well, Greg, we've been in the space, the influencer space, for a long time, long before it became the hot word, because we understood that African Americans influence not only their own communities, but other communities outside of the AA marketplace. Mm-hmm. So whether you're talking about entertainment, whether you're talking about beauty, whether you're talking about technology, music, whatever, fashion, we understood that our consumers were major influences. So I can remember us doing campaigns 10, 15 years ago for movie studios when they had new movies coming out, for lots of brands, for beauty brands. Desiree, when My Black is Beautiful launched from P&G, they came to us to sort of help launch that brand. Yes, you do know that. So we've been in that space a long time. I think the real key is making sure that you attach the brand to the right influencers. because all influencers are not created for everybody. So everybody Black can't influence everything, all right? You know, you have to find that person that is authentic and organically fits with that particular brand. So we've been doing that through our branded content for many years. Examples of, we use DeVal Ellis and his wife Kadeen for a Walmart holiday campaign. We've used for a Mountain Dew campaign that we use several influencers for that. So we've been in that space for years. It's almost like second hat for us. Matter of fact, Lizette kind of knows that, you know, I scream and holler about the amount of budget that we spend on influencer campaigns, but it's what we do and it's part of our sort of DNA and part of our business.
I think Lewis has hit a number of things on the head. As we think about influencers here, and remember, we are just bringing back a mature brand back into the marketplace. We started that journey and introduction in Sephora in October. And so one of the things we had to think about is, what does this brand look like today? Not deviating so much from our history. The brand was started by Eunice Johnson in 1973. And so I often ask myself, what will Eunice Johnson do in 2022? Just to make certain that I'm staying with the DNA of the brand. And as we think about influencers, et cetera, who would she choose? How is that brand, are their brands, the brands of these influencers, connected to our brand? Not a force. I mean, because you don't want someone that's out there, the next thing I turn around, there they are with another brand that, you know, is another makeup brand, because no one's fooled by that. You know, and there are a number of influencers out there that unfortunately have gotten a little bit tied up in, you know, being a little bit overexposed. And so people, I think consumers read right through that. And so that's not your person. And so as we're thinking about the influencer mix that we're going to move forward with, they all are very aligned with the brand, love the brand, use the brand, obviously, not just because we're talking to them. You know, many of them came to us organically, which I think has been amazing. And so they represent different communities within our community, whether it be, as I had mentioned earlier, comedic. It could be someone who has a darker skin tone and wants to talk, you know, about darker skin tones. It could be someone who is a darling of the beauty industry and talks to a very young demographic. And so we have found a series of maybe 5 different influencers, not just choosing one, that talks to all aspects of this community from the vantage point of Fashion Fair. So we'll let you know how it goes. We're just starting. It took us a long time to kind of identify who we wanted to go with, but we're finding that local is good. You know, people, they're like kind of not just always going with a huge movie star that maybe, you know, has X number of followers, but if they don't want to really participate in a, you know, continuous way, you know, one shot doesn't necessarily do it. People want it, especially in the makeup, they want to hear a few more things, especially if you're not on television. They don't want to just have one picture. They want to see what's a day in the life. You know, how do you wash your face? How do you put your lashes? They want to see everything. They want to kind of follow you and be with you on that cosmetics journey. So the one shot, big name, doing a couple of things, we have found that is not as successful as having people that are really talking about the brand over extended periods and allowing people to really, you know, be a part of their communities is what we're seeing.
Thank you, Desiree. So with that being said, just for the sake of time, I have 2 more questions and we're going to make them very brief. This one is actually pivoting towards Lizette, Lewis, and Jennifer. What are the must-haves for a quality multicultural influencer campaign?
Yeah, I'm happy to start. I have a few points. My team's been spending a lot of time thinking about this. And this is going to probably shock a lot of people. I'm just going to say it because there's research that is backing it. We talked a little bit about awareness. So we do want awareness driving, the ability to build awareness. However, there is no evidence to suggest large follower sizes result in higher purchase conversion. I'm going to say it again. There's no evidence to suggest an influencer that has a large follower size will convert to a purchase. So the unlock is going to be around finding an influencer or a creator that is able to connect in a very seamless way that is credible with a very specific audience that you're trying to engage. It's not about follower size. It's about trust and credibility with the audience that you want to engage, that core influencer community. And I think that is the unlock. You have all these kids out here trying to build large follower sizes. It doesn't matter. You will not get higher purchase conversion. I'm telling you right now. That's not the unlock. You got to find trust and credibility. And you have to find someone who's able to drive that messaging authentically in order to inspire purchase intent. I know I'm guilty of this. How many times have you been scrolling through Instagram? I'm like, I buy everything on Instagram. I don't even know why I do it. I have like 18 million Fashion Nova outfits. I'm like, why do I buy these things? I have no idea. Because I'm scrolling through Instagram and I see it. And it's like, it's speaking to me, the ability to inspire purchase intent, not about follower size, not about advertising to us either, because nobody wants to be marketed to. It has to feel very organic and very seamless and very authentic. And then the ability to drive purchase, which I'm telling you that can happen in an influencer marketing campaign without it feeling like selling. So I'm off my soapbox.
Excellent.
Well, that you
Thank
should stay on that soapbox, because that the data is telling you that's exactly right. That you can have a large follower, but that doesn't mean that they're going to be relatable to the brands and relatable to what that you're trying to talk to them about. You need to make sure that they're going to be authentic, off of it, the brand. And then the secondary piece is that I always take a look at is that look at those individuals within the consideration set. Look at past purchase behaviors, because people are always not their true identity self when, we look at research and we look at information. It's like people can say, I buy all organic food, and, and you look in their basket and you look at their purchases, and it's filled with, very unorganic and junk, right? That they're saying that is not it. So you have to think and look at the data. And I always suggest, the first starting point is look at those people in that consideration set based off of purchase behavior of consumer products, because it is habitual behaviors that you're getting trillions and trillions of transactions for, and you get to learn a lot about people and what they're buying from $5, $6 items within their baskets, like how they're living their lives. And so you can learn a lot about those individuals. So I always say, take that as a first step, and then use that and pile on and take those and accelerate off of the different attributes that you want to connect with, and make sure whoever you're talking to, your message is truly authentic to them.
I would second all that. And Lizette, you really touched on something that is extraordinarily important to us. And so did Lewis. And let me bring it a little bit full circle. From a media perspective, what we've done at OMD and OMG was build out a diverse creators network. And for years, we were also tinkering with what we wanted to do with influencers, whether or not it was going to be a managed service. But when we launched the Diverse Creators Network, we found some very specific nuggets that allowed us to then launch a secondary product called Creo. What we are doing is taking that data that IRI has, some of the data that Facebook has, and we get such an enormous amount of data from a variety of partners that we are able to do what we call a brand fit analysis for any of our clients. When they want to go down this journey for creators and influencers, we literally will help them pick the precise creators that share their values, that has an impassioned audience, that can leverage that impassioned audience directly to performance and sales, and be able to either say, you should only have 5 or you should have 50. And here are the magical ones that work for you, whatever their engagement rates are or what have you. And we have found similar data that Lizette talked about, that just because you have 5 million followers, those 5 million followers are not impassioned enough. They just might be entertained by you, but they don't look at you as an authentic arbiter of what they're willing to buy. So we are literally finding those right brand fits for our clients. And Lewis, you talked about equity. and making sure that from an industry, we stand up. We did an enormous deal with the NMSDC so that we can teach influencers and creators how to better negotiate against us so that they can raise their rates, how to better, upskill as a business person, because they are self-publishing entrepreneurs and we recognize them as that. We're doing everything we can, even though we're not like a philanthropic organization, but we're doing what we can to make a difference long-term. And if you're going to do those things, I go back to, it's hard work. Dig into it. Make the difference that you want to see, because consumers are too savvy and they recognize when you're not doing that hard work.
Excellent.
We look for, Greg, for organic connection to the brand and to the audience. In politics, they call it an it factor. What is that thing that politician has that people organically and authentically connect with? We've had people who've, over the years, who've tried to connect to influencers and said, hey, this person, we want them to do this or that, but they're vegetarian. They don't eat meat, so we can't have them do that. Or they don't eat sugar. They don't, drink sodas. We can't have them do that. And what we found, the real authentic influencers, they will tell you, I don't do that. That won't work for me. That's just not who I am. My friends, my family will be dogging me like, oh, you don't do that. Why are you even involved in that? So we really want that authentic connection with both the brand and the consumers.
Excellent. So with that being said, we have a lot of questions from the audience that is here. Thank you all so much for participating in the panel. This has been so rewarding and fruitful. So one of the first questions that was sent to me was, how is it possible to link sales generated from influencers directly to their post, especially with the marketing funnel, when it could have been a multitude of advertisements that a consumer saw that led them to make that purchase? How can you associate a sale essentially with an influencer? Jennifer, you want to tap in first?
Sure. There are definitely opportunities to be able to do that. If we know the influencers, who the influencers are in the campaign, and also to who is in their network, because we can do test and control methodology based off of who is in their network and the number of individuals surrounding, those individuals in that area. We can take a look at those people that were exposed and potentially exposed to those influencers and look at it as associated with sales. And so then you can take a look at those who were, in their network versus out of their network, and you can do a test and control methodology to understand if there was incremental value and sales purchases against it, because you're connecting it directly to the sales from in a CPG perspective. Obviously it's much easier when you have a D2C, that's for offline sales, but a D2C, you can connect it directly when you're doing influencers and somebody's clicking on a purchase. So D2C is pretty easy to do because you can connect it, but when you're looking at regular consumer products offline, you have to do kind of more of this methodology of connections on each of their influencers.
I would agree with that. I mean, we do that at Meta for CPG, retail, auto, and then all of the digital native verticals as well. But the good news is it can be done. And we have tools, various advertising tools that we use on our platform that track that measurement all the way to point of purchase.
All right, excellent. And another question from the audience is, how do you balance an influencer having a long-term partnership with the brand without the content becoming repetitive or annoying?
I mean, I think at the end of the day, your influencer marketing strategy, at least the mindset, is like really leveraging the influencer to meaningfully connect with consumers in a way that authentically amplifies your message, right? So I think if that's where you start it from, then I think that's how you orient your campaign, right? Like, if I think about an example with Skittles, we did a campaign for Pride, and a lot of people are co-opting rainbows during Pride Month. And Skittles has a rainbow as its brand logo. We actually gave up our rainbow to the people in the LGBTQ plus community to amplify their voices during that point in time. And we gave ourselves a queer R code that people could scan, and it connected to key influencers in the community that could tell their story. So I think the reason why that didn't get repetitive is because there was an authentic message behind it. And I think that's really what's key in that, is like really understand what you're trying to accomplish with it, versus if you're like, we just need you to get this many posts on this many things and this many likes and this many times per day. Yeah, that definitely can get repetitive. I think if you lead with something that's more purpose-led, or something that's more around a business objective or a strategy. I mean, we've done things that are more frivolous too, like we did Ricky Mistakes with Snickers as well. So it doesn't all have to be, of the more philanthropic, purpose-driven nature. I just think it's really making sure you're coming from more of a strategic place.
Yeah, I would say strategic and real. People can kind of, and a lot of people have hinted at this, people can really feel it when it's just not real. And so you can't, force it. Maybe it's not going to be that interesting every day, but the next day it'll be interesting. I mean, we as people aren't interesting every day. So I think as long as you keep it real and you pay attention to what the comments are, and what people are saying, that will help make certain that you're having some impactful meaning.
Excellent. So with that being said, I want to thank you all so much for your time and partaking in this IRI Unleashing the Power of Multicultural Marketing, specifically around the lens of influencer. Thank you, Desiree Rogers. Thank you, Barry Wade. Thank you, Tiana Conley. Thank you, Louis Carr. Thank you, Lizette Williams. Thank you, Jennifer Peloni. Thank you all so much for being here with me, as I've been very much engaged, super excited. For anyone in the audience or anyone that should listen to this webinar, please know you can always reach out to IRI for anything related influencer marketing. As I am the Director of Emerging Media and Influencer Marketing, I could assist whether it be through the lens of audience optimization or actual measurement of any campaign. With that being said, to everyone that is currently in the Zoom meeting, we ask that you fill out our survey that will launch as soon as this webinar concludes. Should you have any follow-up questions directly, do not hesitate to reach out to myself or IRI at iriworldwide.com. I want to thank you all again. This has been a very rewarding and fruitful conversation. Thank you. Yeah. Ciao.